Yeah, the agenda is packed.
Welcome to the Threat Management Biweekly Office Hours. I'm going to start just by airing something that's not on the agenda. Last time we talked, I said I was going to reschedule this to by alternating times that would be more convenient for EMEA and APAC. I have not done that yet. I will do that after this call. Apologies, I was out of last week. So that's an action item on me. I'll add it on here. So don't wait for me. Let's get started with the first item in the agenda. Philippe.
That's me. Thank you. We're going to have 15 minutes, like usual. Perfect. All right, so just wanted to follow up on the last discussions that we had a couple of weeks ago about inline comments with vulnerabilities. I was looking for the issue, so there it is. There was something older than that, but I couldn't retrieve it for some reason. So this is the main issue that we can refer to. So this is definitely something that was discussed in the past.
Do you want to share it so it gets recorded?
Do you mean this one?
Or the screen, yeah.
Oh yeah. Do that.
So our many viewers can see it.
We're really popular on YouTube. So this was about being able to actually put comments within an MR within the code change that would point directly or would call out the vulnerability inline there, right, Philippe?
Exactly. So I'm trying to make the font a bit bigger.
You're pretty good.
So yeah, the idea is exactly that. And that's one of the issues when we try to assess a vulnerability. We need to see the code all the time. So having the code really handy, that's something that will save us some time. So if when we click on the vulnerability, we would be able to jump directly from there to the code. Or even better, if we have, that's the discussions that we had with Andy at the time, like a new tab in the, that's exactly what you see here, a new tab in the merge request tabs, which would be the security reports. And that would be pretty much the same tab as the changes, but instead of seeing comments from the reviewers, you would see directly the security issues in the code so that you can have some more context and you can see if, for example, just one file has a lot of findings in there, then you can say, okay, there is something wrong with that file. We need to do something. Either it's a lot of false positives or the developer completely messed up with the changes. So that was to wrap up on this discussion a couple of weeks ago again.
I don't clearly see why this was closed back then, just from like a quick glance, but hopefully Andy still has some recollection of it. I don't know, Matt, how you want to proceed with that. If this is something that, do we have a new issue, or is your suggestion, Philippe, to reopen this one, or?
Not especially this one, but you know, again, anything that would lead to see the code, that would be helpful for us.
Matt, do we have an issue that we could link to this old one from?
I don't think that we do. And it may make sense just to peel off that one piece of functionality, since this is a very old design issue.
With a lot more scope than just that.
Yeah, it's a year and a half old. It looks like some of it has definitely continued to carry forward. Obviously, the tab security report for the MR is still something Andy is looking at. There's a whole lot more stuff in here that, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to digest it a little bit more to see if it actually would still kind of apply or not.
And just on a quick glance, I don't see any issues, at least with the Threat Insights group label, and just kind of looking for inline MR type, things, related terms. So do we want to ask Philippe to create a newer issue for this, or Matt, if this is an idea that you think is part of your plan to tackle, would that be you that would create this issue?
I'd say either way. Selfishly, I would love to have Philippe create an issue. I'm already
so good at it.
He is very good at it. He knows specifically what he wants on this one. Even if we're just copying and pasting out like this block from the old issue, I think that's at least a helpful starting point.
So Philippe, would you be okay with that action item?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah. Adding that. Okay, perfect. Thank you. And by the way, that's something that some competitors are doing already. They don't have this tab that we were mentioning, but they have the ability to comment directly the code. So in the merge request, you see kind of both commenting in line, and you have that. It's a bit mixed up with the reviewer's comments, but at least you see right away if you have a problem in the file. So kind of like that as well. Because right now the process, I'm probably sure that already, we open the dashboard, and for every vulnerability that we want to assess, we open a new tab from this vulnerability because we don't want to reload all the time the dashboard. And from this new tab, we open a new tab to go to the code to see what's the impacted. So we open tab, close tab, and it's stacking and stacking all the time. It's not super tedious, but I think we can come up with something better than just playing with tabs all the time.
And I know we have another request about making the file location linkable, so you don't have to actually copy and paste and go there, but that just seems like an iterative step towards having the code closer to you.
Definitely.
I did find an issue that was called inline vulnerability management MVC that's got some really interesting drawer ideas that I don't know if that would apply to this.
Yeah, but that was a drawer on the side, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't look like it's actually holding any references to the code. So, all right,
something
cool.
Different. Yeah. All right, next point. We still have some inconsistencies, sorry, really hard to pronounce for a French guy. In the data reported in the dashboard, it's sometimes reported as detected, and you can see that, for example, in the screenshot here. If I can share my screen, even if I share my screen, that's not going to. Is that something that I can share? Yes, that was dismissed, so I guess we can share that. So the problem is this vulnerability is detected, the status is detected here, but actually you can see that it was dismissed. So it's either detected or dismissed, but it can be the two. And apparently we have a few issues like this, some vulnerabilities like this. So it's really hard to figure out what is the real status of or a security posture for every project.
Yeah, the drop down says detected on the right-hand side as well. So
in the last entry also shows that Ron reverted it to detected.
Ah, that's probably why. Okay, sorry for that. That's
Philippe,
fine.
that is actually a newer functionality. You were not able to revert something to detected until it was maybe 13.4, 13.5 where that went out.
Okay, I get confused.
No,
okay,
that's quite all right. This is what happens with the iteration. We keep finding things that we realize that the ability of the tools has evolved beyond what it kind of started with. So that one looks okay, I think.
Definitely, and I see Dominic commenting, but he's not submitting.
So what is our process when we find little, I would hate for Tiago to wait, or sorry, for Philippe to wait until this bi-weekly to bring up these, individual like data issues, but asking him to create a separate issue for each one of them. I mean, what is the best way to get these kind of things troubleshooted? Is it just going into is this known or in Slack?
Yeah, I mean, I see you do that fairly regularly, I think, Philippe, and most of the secure engineering team tends to pop into one of our Slack channels and kind of say, hey, I found a thing. Is this real? Is this known?
I'm using this known, the Slack channel, but not for this, because I use that when I don't know where exactly it belongs. But in this case, I know exactly where it belongs. So
I asked because I don't want you to have to wait, the 2 weeks between these meetings to get, answers to things like this.
If it's blocking, I will definitely not ping people, but post directly in your channel.
Okay.
with a few screenshots. But this one I was not sure, so that's why.
It seemed like low priority, and maybe, I mean,
yeah.
if you see, I guess the bigger thing is if you see something more than, you know, if you see a routine or a pattern, like those are definitely things that we need to make sure we're aware of. The individual ones, I know we need to do some data integrity checking and some triage around those, but hopefully they're more likely one-offs.
And that was a very good example, because this one, I haven't posted that to the channel directly because I was not entirely sure if it was me or if it was a bug. So that was definitely me. See, my guts were right on this one.
Cool. Let's move on to number 4 then.
Yeah, that's a great one. This one, I love this one. So one of the main issues that we have is putting together the workflow between the vulnerabilities and the issues. Most of the work actually happen in the issue. And I can tell you for sure that most of the people, including the AppSec engineers, they don't have the reflex to update back to vulnerability once the issue is closed, for example, or something is moving in the issue. And that's also because there is no backlink from the issue to the vulnerability itself. So there's no clue that you need to also update something. So that's something that we need to fix.
Yeah, and I know someone who wrote the greatest issue about this. It's such a really easy, good idea that needs to get prioritized around this. And we create the issue, it'd be very easy for us, I believe, to just add a link back to the vulnerability. I mean, without doing the full related issues type UI treatment, if it was just part of the description of the issue, that would give you that navigability back. And I'll go find that issue. But Matt, I think that was sort of an iterative step towards, I thought maybe that you had said there was more long-term vision than that. Like if you wanted to actually have the related link type treatment to it.
Well, let me see something here real quick. I thought we actually, I thought it did partly what you were saying, but it was a newer ad, so it wouldn't show up yet. Let me look at something real quick here. I thought we were already inserting into the description when it gets copied over into the issue, a link back to the vulnerability.
That's what this issue I created was for, and you've got it in the next 4 to 7. I just put the link to it at the bottom of the D down there. And that's exactly what that was, what you just described. That was what that was intended for.
Then I guess it must be, I'm drawing on a very separate conversation that has nothing to do with this meeting, but we've been doing UX interviews with the AppSec team and watching them go through this workflow. I saw this morning doing the path from a vulnerability, clicking on the related issue, and then in the related issue, there was a line at the top that said from vulnerability, whatever. Maybe they're inserting that by hand.
I could see that if someone edited the issue description and then put the link back to the vulnerability in it. I don't know how they'd find it though. I guess once if you're starting at the issue, how are you able to locate the vulnerability now unless you're manually going to look in the dashboard, right?
I guess so. Let me look at the, here, I'm going to share something in the chat. This is, we can't share it on the video if we want to keep this video public, but if everybody would like to go look at this one. Looking back through the history real quick on this one, just to see if that got, Yeah, see, I'm not seeing in that one that there was any editing of the description, and it's clearly there's a link back to the vulnerability at the top of that.
Yeah, but if you look at this one, that was
I can step through it in staging right now.
And see, that's the one that I just shared is a newer one. And that one from that you're sharing right there, Philippe, is 5 months old. I feel like this was something that got added fairly recently.
Yeah.
So it's obviously it's not going to happen retroactively for the older issues, but at least point forward, it should be something that's happening now for all the new ones.
Did you get him one?
I confirmed. I just walked through it in staging, and it definitely created the text at the top of the issue that says "issue created from vulnerability" with a link. So excellent. I'll close out that issue that I created and stop taking credit for the idea.
Well, no, it was your idea. I feel like this was like one of those really low-hanging fruits that we saw while we were doing some other work, and we said, let's just throw it in there. So that's awesome. We just forgot to close that one out. I do have let me grab the issue here. So longer term, I think the idea was basically, this. More or less adding a related, similar to the related issues block inside of the issues, having like a related vulnerabilities or something of that nature. But that's probably the.
Tiago just brought up a good point in the comment of this issue around we could be using our special reference format in the issue description, whereas today it's a link. I think that's what you were trying to say there, Tiago, right? Shout out to consider using extensible reference for vulnerabilities in the description as a first iteration. So we're not even first iteration anymore, but I don't know if that would be a future iteration. I mean, it's already live today, right? It's already working.
Yeah, first iteration of, because that would be the simplest change, just add to it, then later down, whatever Andy and Matt want to evolve that to. Maybe we want to add the box, like there's already linked issues, related merge requests. Maybe there's also linked vulnerabilities, and you could have an issue relating to multiple vulnerabilities.
And that's what Matt was just looking for, is that we believe there's a design issue around the actual UI box around that, like related vulnerabilities. But this link is already currently live in production. This is already getting created when you create an issue off a vulnerability. So your suggestion around using the extensible references, I don't know if that would be a second iteration or improvement, or if it's just not necessary based on the fact that it's a pretty clear link today. It doesn't make it clear to you that it's a vulnerability, a standalone vulnerability. I use standalone vulnerability in the loosest possible term, but you know, a vulnerability versus another issue. I think it actually kind of looks like an issue. Let me go back to the tests that I did. No, there's no, it's just a link. It's just a hyperlink. Hey, Dominic.
Hello.
Picking up the devil.
I was off the computer and forgot to check the time.
Dark outside. It's night out there.
Yeah, there's a mountain right there that hides the sun pretty early. So yeah, feels like middle of the night and it's 4:20.
I'm not bragging. It's almost pitch dark in here as well.
Looks pretty bright behind you, Philippe.
Yeah, but that's a private joke because we live in the same city, actually.
All right.
All right. Well, Dominic will be happy to know that we've already got the links to vulnerabilities automatically added to issues when they are created from vulnerabilities. So that's already working. Okay, cool.
Very, very good. I used it today. It was useful. I closed a bunch of issues I had open. It was super easy to go back to the vulnerability. That was amazing.
So it would have helped our conversation go faster then, because we were all like, whoa, look, it's already doing that.
A quick question for Matt, actually, with regards to the long-term, what is that, longer-term vision. Do we expect an issue to refer to multiple vulnerabilities at once?
That was something we were discussing a while back. Maybe. I think I've heard requests for, let's say that I've got a bunch of dependencies a bunch of vulnerabilities that are all related to a single dependency that might resolve, let's say 10 vulnerabilities. It would be nice to grab all 10 of those and attach them to one issue to say, go upgrade the dependency, instead of making 10 separate issues for that. So I think that was kind of the thinking behind allowing multiple vulnerabilities to be related.
Yeah, that happens fairly often, actually.
And it is, Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lindsay.
No, go ahead. So you're saying the answer is yes, we're already supporting that today by allowing you to relate more than one vulnerability to an issue?
A vulnerability, you can add multiple related issues to it.
Right.
There is no real reverse linking from the issue side. The issue is kind of blind to
Right.
any vulnerabilities that direction. But I don't see why we wouldn't allow the reverse to be true. One issue relating back to multiple vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that's the next step. I think we already, like when we create an issue from the report, it adds a link automatically. This is the part I said I used today and was really useful. But the next step is if we create like the manual entries, or if we have some sort of import process for the HackerOne reports, like we have linked issues, linked merge requests, linked vulnerabilities would be great. And that kind of widget that's below the description.
And that's actually something that Andy and I are working on in these designs that we've continued to reference, this sort of next thinking of it. In the bulk action, so right now you can only dismiss as a bulk action, but that being an addition where you could actually grab a bunch of different vulnerabilities and say link to a single issue, or basically create an issue and include all of them. So it would be a much more straightforward way to do that. And there's not really one today.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
I'm asking that because I'm not so sure, I'm not sold about duplicating the data from the vulnerability directly in the issue. Because now we have a way to update the vulnerabilities, but it's not going to be reflected in the issue. So we have this problem of, on one side, we have the vulnerability with some data, we have the issue with some other data. The status is not syncing directly. So at best, we can synchronize the status of the two. But for example, if we change the severity, it's not going to be reflected in the issue. So that's going to work with 2-3 issues or 2-3 vulnerabilities. But if we need to scale that to 300 or 400, there's no way we can follow everything and we can deal with this amount of data. So I wonder if we should display the data of the vulnerability directly in the issue instead of copying the data.
So when we do this idea of allowing from the vulnerability report, selecting multiple vulnerabilities and saying create single issue from, we'll have to address that anyway, since that wouldn't really, I don't think that'd be a very good user experience to just concatenate all the different vulnerability details in one gigantic issue. What we're doing right now, which is just when you hit that create issue button, it's just making the API call directly and pre-creating the issue with a copy of the details. I'll see if I can find the issue, but one of the things that we are looking to redo with that behavior, it was actually taking you instead to a pre-filled issue creation template so that it's not making the issue right away. So it would start with the copy details, but just like you would make, go up to say file new issue, you could edit anything that you wanted in there. And then if we did that with the bulk create step, we would probably just leave it more like a blank state. I think that's one half to it. I think the other half is doing that related vulnerabilities block on the issue. And then we could show, I think maybe severity is actually a really interesting idea to show there, since you can pull in like the statuses open close dynamically for related issues and MRs. We may do something similar like for the vulnerabilities, potentially show status and severity inside there. And then that way you're not cluttering up the rest of the issue with that.
Good point.
But that is a very good point on the amount of detail in there right now. And yeah, it's not syncing.
Okay, are we ready to move on to item 5? Sorry, Philippe,
Yeah,
I saw you were mid-thought. I saw it right when I was talking.
To wrap up on this, duplicating the data has one advantage, at least. It's if we search for a particular CV, we will find the issue. but we will never find the vulnerability because it's not part of the search engine in GitLab. So at least we would be able to retrieve what we're looking for. But that's the only advantage I see of duplicating the data. Otherwise, it's a bit confusing.
Would it be better to have our data searchable? I mean, rather than replicating it, how feasible is it to have the details of the vulnerabilities as part of the GitLab search and return a vulnerability?
That would be even better.
I don't know, Matt, you guys have had some discussions around search. I know this is something that's been on the horizon for a while.
Yeah, I'm actually, oh, there it is. Trying to find the issue here. Let me make sure this is the right one before I post it. Yes, actually. So we'll see if it gets kicked out again. But, oops. I add this here to the bottom. So I actually had talked to Mark McGuire about this months ago and created this issue, and it looks like they've actually picked it up for 13.8. At least that's where it's currently scheduled. So including vulnerability objects in the global search, it'll just be an additional tab. So fingers crossed, we'll get something for free in terms of work on this team.
It's got a weight of 1. That's amazing.
It's also been punted out a few times. So, you know, like I said, grain of salt, but hopefully that will make exactly what you're talking about, Philippe, much easier if we can include the full content in there.
Definitely.
Go upvote it. Dominic, get your whole team to go upvote that.
Post it on Twitter.
Right.
Don't you think this is a great feature?
Oh, you already did. Okay, you've upvoted it, Dominic. I just did too.
I just did.
There you go.
Excellent. That'll be exciting.
Moving on to the next point.
Great reminder, Philippe. Thank you.
Yeah, that's just a quick reminder that just for us that we have an issue between AppSec and threat management to gather requests and everything that we would like to see fixed, or we would like to see just to see.
You might be able
moving
to tick off the bug on the must-have, the first one. It says
yeah.
closed. And I noticed on the should have, the second item, that the extensible vulnerability reference is now turned on. So it's rendering as with the markdown with the.
Excuse me. Okay.
Do you see there the last bit?
No.
So on the should have, second item, the last link says has more data than vulnerability. That's the new extensible reference format. It's turned on. I think it's still under feature flag.
He just turned it on today. He shared a message saying that he just
That's-
turned it on today.
Yeah, that's
cool.
why it's showing up like this.
Yeah.
Because that's just a link if you look at the raw data.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's
you
good.
can either add in the reference, or if you paste the link, it will always render like that.
Awesome.
So I wanted to bring up under your must-haves, the second item, the manually group multiple vulnerabilities into one. I mean, there's not been activity on that in 2 months, and it's sitting in design assigned to not Andy. So I'm just curious if that's a must-have. Matt, I don't think this is, I mean, it's in the backlog too. So there may need to be some discussion there.
So I'm keeping that one. The original stuff that Camille and I worked on at the beginning of the year, it's still, I think the intent is still very relevant. The design direction is not, but it's the best placeholder that I've got to reference back to that right now until Andy and I complete the sort of next vision for the vulnerability report interface. And then we'll do a solution validation with Philippe, you, Dominic, in a lot of the AppSec team.
That could be solved directly if we have this ability to link multiple vulnerabilities into one issue. In this case, we don't need to group them anymore. That would be even better if when I close the issue, it's going to directly.
Yes, but no, because if there's like 250 issues, I still have to select 250 issues to change their status, to leave a comment, to resolve them, etc. So if they're grouped into one and I can actually act on the group, this makes some tasks a lot easier. But yeah.
Not sure. So I'm referring to what we were talking like 10
yeah,
minutes
but if
ago.
I link, like we have the scenario right now, 250 vulnerabilities in Vue.js templates. If I can grab all of them and link them to a single issue, this is great. But the next time I have to act on the issues in the dashboard, I'll have to select those 250 issues again to close them, to mark it as resolved, because it's not automatic when the issues is closed. And like anytime I have an operation to do on it, on all the issues, I will have to go back and reselect them all again.
Okay, I was thinking more of the issue was driving the status of these vulnerabilities.
No, it's not.
But yeah, it's not. But in the future, it could be the case.
Yeah,
that would be
there
much more.
There are many things that
us.
if we get one of those, a bunch of other things lower in priority because the task becomes easier. Like if we have strong filtering and selection, I can basically filter by whatever and select what is on my screen. This makes all the tasks easier. so basically, like, yeah, if X happens, maybe Y lowers in priority.
And I didn't mean to derail the conversation. I just realized that this issue is, it's not, these aren't things that must happen, you must have in Q4. This is a rolling list that's come from previous quarters. And the expectation isn't that the must-haves will be done at the end of January. Because I was like, I don't think any of these top 3 items are going to be done by the end of January.
How to achieve something that works really well, basically.
That's the goal.
Yeah, so, and just to add one more thing, with manually grouping vulnerabilities is sort of a solution. And that was an initial stab at the problem that I think, Dominic, you articulated much better, is you just need a way to very quickly narrow your scope of work to a specific set of vulnerabilities. And it needs to be fast and repeatable.
Yeah.
Grouping was our initial solution for that. We have things that are very group-like. It is closer to your sort of filtering saved views of things. We're hoping, we don't have all that much time before the end of the year, so it may end up rolling into the very beginning of next year. But when we do the solution validation walkthroughs with yourself and the other AppSec engineers, that's a major point of focus. We want to validate that what we've got is going to sort of cover grouping without actually having the linking aspect of it like that, because that is a very big piece of it.
I don't know which team is working on that, but around DAST findings, we found that many of the, like, it's not worth reporting bad CSP on 1,000 different URLs. It should be one finding, and I know they're working on grouping all noisy findings into one, but I don't know if it's the DAST that will only have one report or if it's the dashboard that will group everything together.
It's DAST.
It is DAST. Yeah, they are pre-grouping all of those findings so that it's coming across to us as one single finding with details.
I mean, if
this
links happens plus advanced filtering and selection, I think it solves most of the group use cases. Possibly.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Cool. Philippe, your number 6 is kind of it's a hot topic right now. So we've been working on improving this scanner filter for some time. We just had a big conversation with Danielle and Matt and Andy and Tiago and myself about this yesterday. it would help to have a distribution. Oh, so you'd like to see numbers there, sort of like
Exactly.
a count next to each of them.
When we have hundreds of results in the dashboard and I want to see if there's anything related to, I want to see where they are coming from. So every time I have to click on every single scanner to see if there's something related to that or not. So that could save us some time to have just a few numbers next to the scanners there.
I feel like I've seen issues for that, Matt.
I feel like this was something that came up and we had actually intended that as part of a design. I don't remember if it was on the security dashboard, the vulnerability report, or if it might have actually been on a pipeline security tab. There was something about doing that dynamically. I think maybe the issue was, so Philippe, now that we have multiple different filters, let's say that DAST shows 1,000 with the currently selected statuses that you've got and severities, but as you start to filter down by different statuses or different states and different severities, would you expect the number to dynamically change next to DAST to reflect what's there? I think that's where we got kind of hung up and we ended up not proceeding with it at the time. We kind of put a pause on that.
Okay, I see your point. Yes, I would expect that to be updated, definitely. I don't see how you could do otherwise.
And then I feel like it was just a concern about performance, having to go and actually do the calculation and the prefetch of that. As soon as you've changed the filter, you'd have to go grab everything. I have this vague recollection of it doesn't make the call to the back end to refresh the view until you've selected the filter. So how would you display the count in the filter before you've asked it to go refresh the view?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I feel like we went down that path, but no, it's a fair point that it's still a nice to have feature. I don't know, Lindsay, Chago, are any of these things ringing any bells?
They are totally ringing bells. I feel like it was in scope for some of the filter work that we did on the early, and I can confirm this and go back and look at the early, the MVC for the dashboard redesign and some of the filter changes we made at that time. I don't think it was part of the most recent report type filter work that Daniel's been working on. So I think it was de-scoped from that initial dashboard redesign, but that doesn't mean there's not still value on it. And if we were to approach it as like a standalone feature enhancement, you know, I think we maybe de-scoped it because the effort was so high and we wanted to get that MVC out and have lost it. You know, I've just searched around and I am pretty confident we don't have an issue that's representing this right now. Philippe, will you create one?
You can create one, yes.
I think we just need, I think the rule is if you come with a suggestion, you're the owner of the action item for creating the issue.
That's fair. No worries.
And if we find, I can find some of the previous design work that Andy had done around this. I will link it to that.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So let's move to the next and final point. I have the feeling that Dominic's point is exactly the same as mine, actually. So that's a big, hairy one.
Yeah, kind of. I think yours is a bit different-ish. I mean, same result, but different.
Yeah, the idea is we need more control on the data in the dashboard.
So the scenario you had is that there was an error setting up a job. It scanned a bunch of folders that shouldn't have been scanned, like vendor and yarn cache and stuff like that, and had hundreds, if not thousands of results. And then we removed that from the secret scanning, but the results are in the dashboard forever until we go down and close all of them. Maybe the filters will help again. Like select, I don't know, filter by directory where the findings are.
Yeah, but it's not going to, even if you do that.
I mean, if you have really advanced filters, I set directory vendor, I want the findings that are identified as resolved. For secret detection, select all resolved by.
Yeah, but that's going to be your filters. The next engineer.
No, I mean, when I set them as resolved, they're gone. if they're marked as resolved, I mean,
Oh, okay, I see.
you'd have to, you can
could
see them
bulk
if you look
updates.
at
Okay,
resolved
okay,
results,
yeah.
but
Makes sense.
I don't mind a noisy resolved backlog personally.
That's something in the developers themselves have struggled with at times, and they have to rely on production access to go and query and do the query directly to the database. So I don't know how much of a corner case it is, but it's well, I didn't know, but it sounds like it's that there might be real user customer facing benefit from having an advanced sort of filters.
Clean up.
It's happening more often lately as we're using more of the product as well. The other problem is on GitLab.com, the other customers that just, the only choice that they have is to contact support to run the race console for them. So that's not a great user experience.
Yeah, I like it. Is there an issue for it? Matt, what do you think?
A lot of the designs for the new advanced filtering, I can't say they're going to cover all the cases. I feel like I opened one, I'll have to go double check for it, on, this might not address what we're talking about here. I'm still very nervous about allowing deletion given our really coarse permission sets. Like on GitLab.com, or if you're a self-manager, it would make sense to allow that only for the owner role or something like that. But as Philippe said, if you're a GitLab.com customer, that's not available to you, so you can't use that option. Maintainer feels far too broad to be able to allow people to just delete the vulnerability records. The issue that I had created was almost like a test mode, where if you're doing a new project or you're changing a configuration setting, you put things into test mode, and when it's in that test mode, it will still do all the regular detection and functionality. But then when you go to turn the test mode off, it'll give you the option to basically throw everything away or keep it. And it's a one-time
That's
deal.
the merge request. But if you create a merge request and you see that the problem is in this project, that was super fun because the CI configuration was not really steady. So if you were in the branch, there was some jobs running. If you are in master, some other jobs are running. So it's not super stable. And we didn't see in the merge request where we were enabling secret detection, for example, that we would create 250 new findings. But it should be there in the merge request. If the project was configured correctly, I would spot directly, oh, there are 250 new findings. There's something wrong. There's no way we could have so many secrets in this project. But here in this case, the merge request was super clean. There was nothing, everything was green. So when we merged, it ran on master, the cache was running a bit differently, the configuration was different, and boom, suddenly we have these 250 new findings. So yeah, we could just filter them out and dismiss them in the UI, but if you're thinking of the GitLab project, for example, I'm not going to share too many details here, but we have way more than 10,000 findings that are completely not going to be used. They are probably false positive. We're not going to do anything with them. I'd rather not dismiss them, because once we will have a search in place, they will show up all the time probably, and we will have a very hard time to find something in the real dismissed issues that will dismiss vulnerabilities among these thousands of other results that we don't want to keep.
That's a good point.
I'm not going to solve that today, for sure, but I'm planting the seeds here.
Well, I wonder if in that case, Philippe, it'll help some too when we add additional statuses for dismissals. There's an issue to extend what we've got today, because I think it just won't fix false positive. But we're adding in 2 or 3 other states so that you can more accurately, like, is it a test case? Is it a, are we just, it's a true positive, we're just accepting the risk and we're going to leave it there. So
I had a new type of dismissal. I wanted to find the issue, but I didn't find it the other day. I should look harder.
Okay.
Basically something that is marked as resolved by the scanner before I've even looked at it. So now, like if I change the status to resolved, I mean, maybe I've never even seen the bug. So I kind of don't want to commit my name to, yes, this is resolved. More like abandoned ship. It was the status I'm looking for. Just, it appeared, it's already solved. I have other things to do, then look if it was really a bug before being marked as resolved. So just cool, moving on is a status I was looking for.
Dominic, I just put it in the agenda there. That is the design issue for that, for the dismissal reasons.
There was a similar use case that came up with the alerts for container security. The current alerts from operations, they have four status. They have triggered, acknowledged, resolved, and ignored. And in container security, we have equivalent for all of those with different names, but there's one extra which is confirmed. It's like, yeah, this looks like a real thing, but we still need to work on it.
We have that in the dashboard, right? We have confirmed.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a common theme around alerting.
Yeah, it's kind of the ignored
things
that I think
you're missing.
Would fit here. We have dismiss. I don't know. It's I guess I could dismiss it, but I need a
Yeah,
for it.
Funny enough, just to simplify the MVC on container security, we mapping statuses on to existing ones before we can implement our own. So triggered is called unreviewed, acknowledged is called in review, resolved is called resolved. We don't have one for confirmed, and ignored is called dismissed. I wonder if there's a need for customers to have their own, pick their own names or pick their own workflows for this. It complicates things a lot, but I wonder how useful that would be to customers.
Maybe it's just that this is a super fine-grained setting, but in the should the dashboard automatically mark as resolved the issues kind of discussion, if there were never any action on the issue, maybe it should be actually marked as resolved by a non-user, by the report.
There's an issue for that.
I think there is an issue for that. I was trying to find it.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's an issue for automatically marking as resolved. And there's some discussion that we might want to manually review the solutions and everything. And I think this is a legitimate use case that we don't necessarily want to close everything, but an issue that we never acknowledge, we never touch the status, no comment, no nothing. If it's marked as resolved, and just clean it up. That would be what
happened there is you accepted the risk by default. By not looking at it, you're accepting that risk.
Yeah, I mean, if it's marked as resolved and it's the 54,000th issue in my dashboard, I'm going to trust the machine and look at the other issues. I would love to know how many issues that are not considered resolved by the scanners in our dashboard. I don't know if I have that, if that number is easy to fetch, because I feel like we have 30,000 DAST issues that DAST itself thinks are fixed. I'm just curious of the real number we have.
So is that the issue that you were thinking of, the one that is in the chat? Okay.
Yeah, actually, I posted in that discussion. I guess I should add what I just mentioned now. I'll do that.
We are at the end of our time. So unless if anyone else has any other topics or continuation on this one, I think we can call it an hour.
Yeah, should we move number 8 to number 1 on the next, or copy to continue?
Dominic is
It was pretty much the same thing, I think.
kind of related, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was it's basically what I just said that fit with the previous conversation. So it's all good.
Great. And Dominic, you missed this. I'm going to be rescheduling this at a time that will be a little, we'll do an APAC and an EMEA friendly one every other week. So one occurrence every other week won't work for you in your time zone, I imagine, because it'll be too late. But hopefully the other one will be a little earlier. Maybe the sun will still be up in the background.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Winter. Sun
for a
doesn't
minute.
come up very frequently.
All right. Was there anything shared today that should keep us from making this video public? I think we've caught ourselves in cases where we are going to share information about a customer or vulnerability. Nope.
I think we did okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and share this in YouTube, and I will put the link in the threat management room. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for your time. That was great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.